Well, it's 1 o'clock, and we'll call the meeting to order. Just going down the list here, are there any added items to the agenda? Yes, CEO Williams.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. If council's okay with it, I'd like to add a CAO report under Section 7, New Business. There's just 3 emergent items that came up, require some brief direction on, if that's acceptable.
Thank you. I don't see a problem with that. Is there any objections to adding CEO report under item number 7 under new business? Mayor Dahl?
Is this my? Very good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I was just going to adopt the agenda with the addition of item 7A, if you're ready.
Okay, one moment, and we'll just let Councillor Cummings settle in here. Councillor Cummings, we had an addition to the agenda with item number 7. It'll be 7A under CEO report for new business. Is that okay with you? Oh. Okay, thank you very much. We'll just move on then, and we'll go to your motion then. Thank you, Mayor Dahl.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And I so move the adoption of the agenda as amended with the CAO report, item 7A.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, which is the adoption of the previous minutes from the Policies and Priorities Committee meeting. Is there anybody? Make a motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you to Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that the minutes from the July 4th, 2022 Committee of the Council Policies and Priorities meeting be accepted as presented.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns with regards to the minutes? Anything changes at all? Seeing none, all in favor then? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to number 3, which is our presentations and delegations for the Mountain View Emergency Shelter Society. And CEO Williams, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Director Andrew will do the introductions for this one.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Kergnen and Bob Phillips from the Mountain View Emergency Shelter Society. And Joe will have the speaking notes for the presentation.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. We're grateful for the land lease that we presently have. What we're looking at doing is to see if we can extend the property on that. The initial discussions we had were for that piece of property. Once it came to council, of course, it was cut in half, and that was what the lease did. So I'm here to speak to you today on that portion. So the shelter, as you can see, is a place, the temporary refuge for people suffering from domestic violence. They'll operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With that, and a lot of times there's children involved in that as well. Next slide, please. So the community partners so far is we have Jordette Design, who has volunteered as the architecture. He's done our plans for phase 1 and phase 2. We have RBL Roofing, who have donated, are going to donate materials and labor. Webb Excavating to donate their services as well. And we have Brian Gardner Custom Homes. Brian has volunteered to donate his time and company in completing this as a tribute to his daughter, who lost her life in a domestic violence situation in Bowden in March 2021. So once this is complete, we will, in tribute to Kirsten, his daughter, it'll be named Kirsten's Place. Okay, so the fundraising so far that we've done is we've raised $225,000. We've done that through radiothons, through golf tournaments, through donations. We will be doing additional ones. I put the cost at $340,000 for phase one. That is an estimate depending on what the cost of materials are. We had some numbers before the pandemic hit. As a result of the pandemic, the cost of materials has gone way up, so we can't get a firmer number until we're ready to proceed with that. But as I said, some of the materials and a lot of the labor will be donated by different companies and individuals. So then we plan and hope to break ground in the spring 2023, and of course with phase one, which will basically, as you can see, a basement, which will have a classroom, meeting room, and storage. Then our main floor will have our cooking and dining facilities, and of course our reception area, with one client bedroom on the floor, because this will be an all-inclusive facility for victims of domestic violence, whether it's a male and his children, or a male, or whether it's a female and their children. So we have the one bedroom on the main floor to start with, and then on the second floor we have four additional client bedrooms. So that's what we're trying to get off the ground. As we process further, then phase two would be additional clients' bedrooms with some transitional housing. So usually in a shelter, the family or the people can stay for usually 21 days is the general rule. After that, then a lot of them have nowhere to go. So then they look at transitional housing, which is either additional bedrooms or another building. It's different in a number of the cities. And of course, from there, they can stay up to 18 months. And there is some assistance from the provincial government for those people to pay rent, and it's trying to get them back on their feet and teach them some skills. Now with phase two, once we have it up and running, we hope to offer the cooking, budgeting and shopping, addiction information, and of course parenting. And we visited the Rocky Mountain House Shelter, and of course they have quite a system up there where they teach all this, which I thought was very beneficial. So basically, phase one, you can see the basic layout of that, with the one bedroom, the dining room, and everything with that. Then we have the upper floor, basically the 4 bedrooms. All right, so with the current location right now is if we look ahead as well as, phase one, and as we look ahead, it's not enough room for a shelter, phase one, phase two, etc., and a playground and parking, and we found now, of course, a designated smoking area with that, because of course it will all be secured and fenced with that for the safety of the victims there. So we found that there is not room for any phase growth, so we'd probably have to find another piece of land if we built our initial one here, phase one, phase two, and then as we grew from there. Of course, the way that land is set up, of course, there's some trees at the very back. The one area I would call, of course, we'll have to cut that down and remove those with that. And of course, the other concern that I had is with the closer it is to the tracks, of course, the noise with that. And I did a few decibel tests myself out there. And with that, and as you move farther away, it does cut the noise of the train down. And I'm thinking of the effects on the people that were in the emergency shelter. They already have some stresses, some traumatic issues in their life. So I thought we would discuss that as well. Okay, so the additional benefits, of course, and now you see the piece of property. And of course, it's a placement for the shelter. It allows long-term growth and no need to relocate for the future. More usable playground, parking space, things like that. And of course, at the initial time, we wouldn't have to remove those trees if we could move back farther with that. and it creates an opportunity to start on phase 2, I'll say sooner. Now, of course, with that definitely comes funding, and there's a number of different issues with that. We do operate presently on grants, but that's because that's with our workers. Right now, there's no grants for capital. Well, I shouldn't say there's no grants. There's very few grants for capital. But once we have a building up and established, then of course, that would open up to more grants as well. All right, any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Kerrigan. I'll open it up to the questions from the floor. Go ahead, Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. She's listening very attentively. Thank you very much for sharing the information with regards to this. I do have two questions, and the first question is, who can tell me, I don't know if administration or past councilors, or why was the property cut in half? It wasn't that way in the past. Was that in the last 4 years that that decision was made?
Well, what happened is we had a piece of property 4 years ago that the town wanted back for use. So then they opened up this one, and when we got into our initial discussions, the piece of property that we see here is what was discussed. Then it went to council. We got a lease that said we'll lease you half the land. We had no discussions or any information. So I don't know those answers.
Can a past councilor tell me, or is there a reason why it was cut in half?
Councilor Blatz, would you like to reply, or shall I? As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Wagstaff, you probably would remember this as well, that the land that was provided was comparable to the same size of land that you had over behind the police station, if I remember correctly. Director Wagstaff?
There had been a recommendation that for that full north chunk, and council at the time felt that it was more than what they felt was necessary because it was about double the land space that had been provided at the protective services. That was
Okay,
council's.
yeah, we were never
Decision.
told that. We were just told it went before council.
Okay, but that was, so I was correct in that it was, the land that was given over in that area was the same, about the same size, maybe even actually a little bit bigger than the land that was originally earmarked for you over at, by the RCMP station.
Correct.
Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, but I think in note now of what we've been provided and the information that we have, it definitely should be a council should have another, and administration should look at this situation again and determine if, and how much more land we can provide and what would be adequate. And I think we need to open those lines of communication between ourselves and the emergency shelter folks.
Okay, thank you. Director Andrew, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. And just in conversation with the background, one of the things that came up with the previous council was that the lease agreement or the arrangement on the land had, I'm not sure if it was a sunset clause or a timing factor where action had to be taken within a certain date, otherwise the use of the land was in jeopardy. And so the problem was at the time is that with the shelter and where they were with the organization and the funding model, it was going to be a hurry up and build something that wasn't suited for the long-term growth or the success of the program. It was going to be to secure that land, they had to do something. And so the one piece that has come to fruition since that time is a very concrete plan. So they have building plans, they have a design, they have funding, they're almost at their goal essentially to get the dirt turned. And the one thing I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is that once the first portion of this shelter is constructed, it really gains momentum quickly because there is a huge benefit and a need that's being filled, and attracting additional funding sources and grants, as he had mentioned, becomes easier because they have a functioning facility. So the whole package together now has a much broader perspective and a lot better opportunity, I think, for the long-term success of providing the shelter. So that's just a little bit of that background piece that hopefully helps.
Thank you, Director Andrew. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you very much for that information. That's great, a great update. Thank you very much. So going back to the original site basically is what you're doing, aren't you? Instead of being pushed back to the railroad tracks. Because see you note here also that you're looking for space for a playground. And that brings me up to another point, because of course we all know that the Rocky Mountain Shelter is based on daycare model. Well, there's the Alberta Council for Women's Shelter, called the Healing Brain. It's a project that they have strictly for that funding, which they received a large donation in the past year from IODE. And they're based out of Edmonton, and that you have proven now with these plans is part of that future, so you may be able to apply for that grant as well.
Yes, because not everybody that comes through domestic violence has children, but a lot of them do. And yes, they have to be taken care of, I'll say, for different times, because
Sorry, supplemental.
And mental.
Thank you very much. The add-on to that is that you can't apply for this grant unless it's related to a new build and a daycare.
oh, okay.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Daly?
I would just like to agree with Councillor Blatz that this needs to come back to council and be worked through with administration and council to come up with a more fitting development plan. As was mentioned, the piece of land was leased to this organization under the assumption of, and now with some concrete plans in place, I think we need to take a look at this parcel of land and just come up with a development plan that would actually fit in here and meet their needs as well as the town's needs. So I would agree with Councillor Blatz on her recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thanks for the presentation, and definitely acknowledge a much-needed service for our community. You talked about the inflationary pressures, and just wondering, is the timing of the groundbreaking dependent on you achieving a certain fundraising level? Like you're, I'm not sure, 70% there right now. Is there a certain dollar value that you need to achieve before you will break ground?
That's hard to answer right now. I think we're close, and our plan is to break ground in the spring. I have to sit down with Brian Gardner and, of course, see again what the plans are and what his sub-trades are going to donate. So I think we're very, very close, and the plan is to start in breaking ground in the spring. So it's hard to answer at this point because, again, in 2 months from now, if lumber went down 25%, then I'd say yes, we're a go.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And just another question there. Like you mentioned, you did a little bit of a decibel test, a noise level test.
Yes.
So just on this piece of property, just by moving further east, there's an appreciable difference?
There was, yeah, and mine's just on my phone, but there was 15 decimals different moving 50 feet away. So, and of course, with that, you know, and that was, I'll say it, I think I was there at 10 o'clock in the morning or something, so.
Thank you. Are there any other questions then? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept the Mountain View Emergency Shelter presentation for information, and I would instruct administration to bring this back to council at a further date, or ask if administration could bring it back to council at a further date, in a further date. Sorry, later date. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I think we've got that. Mayor Dahl?
You, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Is there a timeline? Is it sensitive? Is the timeline sensitive for when council could discuss this once again, so that you would have a decision from council?
I would say yes. We were sort of on two thoughts, is if we had before the winter time the ability to clear the land and even see about utility services, right? Rather, we're not going to dig the basement till the spring. But if we had that and everything in order before the snowfall, then yes, we would do that.
Thank you. probably the discretion of the CAO would know that it's time sensitive. Thank you.
Thank you all. We've got a motion on the floor. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, can I have a vote, please? All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Kerrigan, for your presentation. We'll now move on to monthly reports with regards to page 15, 4A, Olds RCMP Quarterly Report, and CEO Williams, it's all yours.
We have Staff Sergeant Wright with us today.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Staff Sergeant Wright.
Thank you very much. Flipping through my papers here. There were 4 items within the package sent. One was the letter to Mayor Judy Dahl, followed by a municipal policing report and some statistics and a color wheel of the Alberta Provincial and Police Services priority. Did that come through? Oh, yeah, there you go. So, as per the town's policing priorities that were identified to me, this report, the municipal policing report, is more or less geared towards addressing that. Rather than read the report in its entirety, I'd just like to go through the highlights if that's agreeable.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Wright. Unfortunately, I don't see in my package, I did not receive the municipal stats. We don't have that? We already have the wheel, so, or this provincial,
Oh, really? Okay, well,
yeah, so I think you might have to go through them.
yeah, for sure.
Point of order,
I'll touch on the stats.
Legislative Clerk?
we can bring the report forward after the meeting. We can provide it and include it with the minutes. It just wasn't received.
I take responsibility for that oversight, sorry. But I'll go through it with you. There isn't really any large changes, to be honest with you, in the stats. I went through them, and there's really no gaping changes, so.
Thank you very much. Maybe you could just give us some highlights then.
For sure. Okay. So largely, the policing priorities are crime reduction, community engagement, visibility, mental health, domestic violence, and there's a little bit of traffic in there, which can be interpreted as community engagement for some, or crime prevention for others. With regards to crime reduction, we had, in the period of April 1st to June 30th, 4 offenders on judicial enforceable conditions within the town of Olds. And reviewing the amount of checks on these 4 individuals was only 15 curfew checks. And so I went to my NCOs and I said, I'd like to see it higher. I'd like to see more compliance checks. So we've developed a new system in place for the members to go out, and now moving forward, of course, 2 members will be assigned 1 offender, and then they'll be responsible for those enforcement checks. So we're expecting the numbers to go up more substantially. We also, within that specified period, we had 1 drug search warrant executed within the town of Olds, resulting in 3 Controlled and Drug Substances Act charges against individuals. Again, with the additional members that we received, like new members that we received in July, this next quarter, those numbers will be substantially higher. We've had more drug seizures and charges laid recently. So things are moving up in terms of enforcement. Community engagement and visibility, this is kind of my thing. Still working on getting a community resource officer. I'm like this close, just doing negotiations with Airdrie Detachment. We've identified a member initially will be provided to us on loan, and we're hoping that that turns into a permanent transfer into the position. So, and tons of community policing, victim services, school resource officer experience, like 4 or 5 years of it. So we're very pleased, very close. So in the meantime, I'm still kind of doing that off the side of my desk. All right. Within that April 1st to June 30th, I participated in an interagency meeting with Mountain View Family Collective, which included professionals from mental health addictions, the women's shelter, school resource counselors, and victim services. April 28th, I participated with Peace Officer Erica Gudis at the Alberta Mental Health Parents Information Night at the Olds High School. So we spent the evening there. You know, we kind of had a booth, not a lot of questions, but we were there visible and meeting other external partners as well as parents that are interested in promoting mental health and addictions prevention with children. We're doing another one here, is it tomorrow night at the college? It's Thursday. Yeah, because we've got one at the, we have a sportsplex tomorrow night. Right, showcase is Wednesday, and the mental health is Thursday at the wetlands? Vice versa. Vice versa? Sorry. Going to both. So if I show up to one and nobody's there, I'll go to the other one. Not to steal Justin's thunder, but the peace officers are also attending with me. So. All right. What was interesting too is I had an opportunity to go to Calgary, and I realized, well, how does that relate to Olds? But I participated in a Sikh cultural workshop at a Sikh temple in Calgary, in Northeast Calgary. I've had the privilege of working with Sikh officers in the past, and sort of, you know, getting sort of a coffee room education on the culture and religion. But this was an opportunity to spend the day at the temple and participating in observing, more or less, just sort of the goings on within the temple and cultural aspects that I wasn't aware of before. And what I was able to do, of course, was bring that back to Olds. And it's not just because once in a while I get like a Sikh member posted to Olds, but there's also a growing Sikh community within Olds. Albeit maybe not everybody lives in Olds, but certainly there's a lot of businessmen and business people, rather, that are from the Sikh background. So it's really quite interesting to understand the culture, for sure. And I feel like it would help me in my job as well as my members' job by understanding. We participated with the fire department and the peace officers as well as Alberta Health Services with the party program at the high school, where we had the mock crash, and there were spin-off lectures as a result of that. We participated in Build a Dream event. It was a career fair organized by Olds High School. It was targeted towards teenage girls and gravitating towards different professions, and we were able to bring up a recruiting unit from Calgary to have a booth and talk to the kids. Participated in an Olds Police Advisory Committee. We had Tom Christensen come, and that was quite interesting because we were able to talk about cyberbullying. That's just, it's a growing trend, and of course we like to educate ourselves as well as the Police Advisory Committee, and able to benefit from that, and also wish Tom a farewell and happy retirement. Went to a town hall in Bergen, and again, how does that relate to Olds? But the only resident from my detachment area that showed up to that town hall was from Olds. So we were able to talk about a few issues in Olds. Participated in an emergency management meeting hosted by Mountain View County, which was at the fire hall, and we were discussing various tabletop exercises. And of course, we're very fortunate this summer that we didn't have an actual environmental emergency, large scale within the Olds area. Certainly the tornado that occurred was in Bergen, and then we recently had a large fire south of Carstairs, but largely we haven't actually had to have a real life exercise. However, that being said, I'm assuming there will be a tabletop exercise this fall. Oh, and lastly, I spent the day at the Mountain View Pistons Show and Shine showing off a police car and meeting about hundreds of people. and walking around, and I was able to judge the Mopars. So that was great. That was a day well spent, for sure. So that's kind of the community engagement pieces outside of work that, my normal duties that we've been doing, just to engage the community in various angles and ways, to hear what they have to say and their comments, and just sort of learn more and do better. And all right. I already mentioned it, but I'm going to tie it in again. In terms of your mental health and domestic violence priority, continue on with Alberta Health Services Mental Health and Addictions Counseling. We are participating in that event this week, and as well as we did on April 28th, really just meeting our external partners that are involved in the community, so we're able to tie them in when we do come across people in distress that need help. We know who to call for support services. So we're hoping to have a workshop on domestic violence, open to anybody, people from Olds, outside of Olds, whoever would like to come. We're hoping to host that and put that together this fall. Okay, with regards to the statistics, apologize again for you not getting it. It's a 2-page Olds Municipal Detachment statistics sheet, and I went through it, and I really don't see any deviance over the last 5 years with regards to the statistics. Largely, pretty much everything is even in online. There's really been no spikes. But if you're provided with a copy and there are any questions arising, I'm certainly be happy to answer that. And sorry, but I really don't have a lot to say about this. This came out of K-Division. It's very nice. Yes, yeah. If you do have any questions about that, please, you can ask me now and I'll do my best to answer them, or if you'd like to forward them through the CAO or email them directly to me, I'd be more than happy to research the answer for you. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Staff Sergeant? Yes, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your pinwheel that we got here for the provincial police priorities, there's a new phrase in here, a term I'm not familiar with, and one that's kind of missing that we've been discussing for the last few years when it comes to policing in our communities. The new term is priority offenders, and it seems to be replacing maybe your habitual offenders. Is that a fair thing to say, or is a priority offender some new thing and we're just forgetting about habitual criminals in our communities?
Although I don't have a recollection of being advised of what their new definition of a priority offender is, I'm very confident that habitual offender is inclusive of that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else with a question? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thank you, Staff Sergeant Wright, for the presentation. Just a question, are there any trends you're seeing in central Alberta or elsewhere that give you pause or cause for concern?
So I'm going to try to articulate my answer very carefully. We are responding to a lot of rural theft, which can be traced back to persons with methamphetamine addiction. And I mean, it's just something that we're dealing with in 2022 that maybe we just weren't dealing with in 2015. There are, I can't even tell you how many dozens of persons who are participating in theft as a source of income to fuel their lifestyle, and as a result, creating a lot of problems, public safety issues for Albertans, for people in Mountain View County, for people in Olds. We are very, very careful and diligent in apprehending these people. But to be honest, they're not held. And they need to be held, and there needs to be treatment for them while they're being held. Simply releasing them back to the community is just causing, it's a catch and release. And it's just causing recidivism, and it is very taxing on resources, and it does concern me. Public safety concerns me. That's my number one concern. And so when these people are driving very, very quickly, I fear. You know, I mean, we do our best to apprehend them safely. But it's just something that, you know, I mean, I can't speak for any agency outside of the RCMP, but I mean, they have our undivided attention, and we pour resources to try to apprehend them safely, but we just simply can't seem to keep them.
Thank you. Actually, Staff Sergeant, I have a question for you, and I just was wondering about the staff complement over at the local
Right.
station. Are you full?
We are, on paper, yeah, we are mostly full. We have our sergeant in place who was supposed to come with me today. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it at the last minute. I was going to introduce him. His name's Greg Beach. So he's been with us since July 1st. Well, July 4th, I guess. He's been with us, so it's been a real help to me having them there. We have both our corporals in place right now, and we have, we're just missing 3 constables. One is the community resource officer, and we've got 2 that are currently not working. One's working somewhere else, and one's on a bit of a leave. But other than that, I would say that, you know, we've got 12 constables, so we have 9 constables in our all of our NCOs. So we are doing very, very well comparatively to other communities. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Very pleased with those numbers, actually.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Okay, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm struggling for me, how to word this question. It ties in with the mental health, mental wellness focus. And I'm just wondering, so when you folks respond and determine that I don't know how you determine that there's a mental health issue or wellness factor involved, as far as accessing support services, is there somebody on your staff that's trained, that's accessible on a moment's notice, or are you calling the support line like most people do for mental health support? Just wondering what that looks like as far as support to your detachment to diffuse or de-escalate situations related to mental health.
Right. My members are very, very competent. I have a lot of faith and trust in them and their ability to deal with people that are struggling with mental health issues. Most of them are very good at recognizing that there is an issue to begin with. I mean, it's all about communication and asking questions. When it comes to maybe more the complex issue, we certainly have access to RPAC, which is our specialist out of Cochrane. And we have a full-time psychiatric nurse that works for our PAC, as well as a dedicated constable. They work as a team, and they have come up to Olds. They just did a presentation last Wednesday to my members. We've utilized them on certain complex cases for assistance, because ultimately we're trying to help these people, right? And but we do receive in-service training to a degree, and of course there's a few of us that have been around for a long time and kind of have a good understanding of how things work, so we're able to provide direction as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion? Councillor Cummings?
I move that we accept for information Yeah, I'm just breaking it down because there's nothing we're bringing back. So I'll just pass the motion that we, or place the motion that we accept for information the RCMP report.
Thank you very much, the quarterly report. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns with regards to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Staff Sergeant Wright. And we'll look forward to seeing the actual stats. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 4B, which is the Olds Fire Department quarterly report, and CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. For the next two items, Director Andrew will take care of both the fire department and the municipal enforcement quarterly reports.
Thank you, Director Andrew.
Okay, thank you. So starting off our second quarter report for the fire department, in this quarter we responded to a total of 91 incidents. Based on the information here, you can see the turnout time, which is the time of a call initiated to the time that an effective response force was rolling out the door. The differentiation between the rural and urban is fairly substantial when you look at that, and the reasoning behind it is the type of call has a factor and the time of day. And so I'll show you in the statistics going forward here that a lot of the urban incidents in this quarter were actually occurring in the nighttime hours. So we have members sleeping at home and responding to the fire hall from there, as opposed to being out and about during the workday. So there's nothing alarming about these numbers that our guys are slower going to calls because it's in town than the other. It's just it's amazing what statistics will tell us. So the average number of firefighters per incident, this is again the number of firefighters that actually responded to the call and were utilized on scene. These numbers again are indicative of the actual nature of the incident. The rural numbers typically are higher, again because of the time of year that this covers. There was grass fires and things where we had more members out in the rural area fighting fire for a longer period of time, whereas in the urban setting we have a lot of medical type response calls to the seniors lodges and such, where it may only take 1 or 2 members to deal with that. So that's why the average balance is the way it does. Without going into a ton of detail on these, again, this is a brief snapshot of the rural incidents, and so it gives a demographic of kind of the things that we were responding to, and the numbers are based on, this graph is a little bit hard to differentiate on, but it looks at the total number of calls is 39. These are all the top area are tabulated within, and then the same with the bottom. So I know if you add all those numbers up, it doesn't equal 39, but it's not meant to. So anyway, but that is the demographic of the calls. So there again, there's nothing alarming. It was pretty standard for the rural type incidents. And when we get onto our urban type calls, again, there was a higher number of calls for the town. And again, we had a fair number of responses of variety. And again, nothing that really stands out. Our medical responses for both urban and rural were somewhat slightly higher than they would be traditionally, but again, there's no real trend there that's alarming that needs to change. Again, as people adjust back to normal life after the COVID years, we've just seen a generalized increase. This chart here shows you the time of day where our calls are occurring. And so, as you can see, there are a difference there when we get into the evening hours in the urban area. That 9 to 10 p.m. one had a fair spike. And again, so that has an influence on our shoot times and turnout times. Rural calls are typically happen in the afternoon, which was interesting because, again, when you start to look at some of the types of responses that we have, again, heat of the day type things where you get fires and transportation related incidents such as car accidents, and that tend to happen early in the morning or late at night. Again, so you can just see the breakdown, the difference of calls. Again, these are kind of redundant bar graphs that come with the report. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our total number of calls in this quarter would be typical for the period. Now, again, because this is already outdated as far as its timestamp, our call volume on year to date is high. We had a very busy summer month. We'll report on that the next quarter, but we are on pace for 400-plus calls this year, which is a substantial increase from the last couple of years. So we've been very busy through the summer months, which has traditionally been the case where it's very quiet, and unfortunately not the case this year. So that concludes the fire department statistics. If anybody has any questions, happy to entertain.
Thank you, Director Andrew. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Question for Director Andrew. If we compare the numbers that we have pre-COVID to what you see now in this same time frame, are you seeing similarities, or are we above and beyond that as well?
Yeah, so actually the comparison of the calls that we're seeing right now to prior to 2020 was that we are actually very close to what they were. So I believe, if I recall, in 2019, our call volume on the year was right around 400. And like say, we're on pace to excel that right now. I mean, we could see some dry periods of calls per se that would slow it down. But the one thing that we are seeing as an increase is just that there seems to be a more or a higher desire or need for medical intervention in people that are calling. So, and again, this was something that happened out of COVID, is that when people were not accessing the hospital and the doctor's clinics and things as regularly as they would, it seemed that they were getting a lot sicker and then needing more help when they actually did call. And so that has continued, and EMS is experiencing that as well as the hospital and the clinics. So I hope that that will settle down, but fingers crossed it's just a matter of people resuming normal life that is seeing these numbers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Director Ryan, and thanks, Director Andrew, for the update. I just wanted to confirm, you said year over year, the number of incidents is up, 2021 or 2022 versus 21?
Correct. So in 2021 and 2020, our call volume had dropped down to approximately 300. I think it was respectively 350 and 300, I think, if I'm mistaken, but markedly down from the year previous where it was around 400. So again, this year, currently we're sitting at, I think, 270 calls on the year already. So again, we are on projection to be in excess of 400.
Okay, because if I'm reading it, and I realize these are just snapshots, but looking at the quarter over quarter comparison, we're actually down, right? Like 91 this year versus, I think, 107 the previous year.
Correct, yeah. So for the quarter, we definitely are.
Yeah, okay.
It's absolutely correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, the summer months and the first quarter, I should say, which this is being reporting, typically would be a slower period. So yeah, we kind of catch up in a later half of the year for sure.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? I have a question for you, Director Andrew, with regards to the graph on page 21 that shows the rural incidences. And I'm just wondering, down there at the bottom when we talk about assisting other fire departments, mutual aid, there was eight calls or 8 incidents. Is that pretty much on par with what we see, and are we getting the same reciprocal numbers? Like, are we calling in as many mutual aids as we provide out?
As far as the number for a quarter, this number is fairly high. I can speak to that because it was a fairly dry spring, and we did respond to a fair number of mutual assistance ground fires in the different jurisdictions. I can say that we do respond to more mutual aid requests than we generate. I don't have the number specifically in front of me as to how we would have requested in that period. It would have been fairly low, maybe 1 or 2. Again, we could look into that further, but again, we typically respond. The big thing on that is our geographic location is part to do with that we are one of the only mutual aid responders for Sudbury just because of their remoteness, and so we are close to them for a lot of things. So that is a factor that we go and assist them. I shouldn't say frequently because it's not, but it's they're our most frequent mutual aid agency. We will also respond with Bowden into the Red Deer County area as well, just again, size and geographic location.
Great, thank you. And I was just wondering, what, like, that was going to be my second question, was how far out of field do we go? And do we go down, like, I know that we responded to some assistance down in Carstairs, but do we go down to towards Crossfield? Do we go out towards Three Hills? How far do we go?
Again, we have mutual aid agreements with all the surrounding entities around us and all the municipalities, and so the potential is always there. But we typically stay pretty close, that we wouldn't go any further than Bowden. Obviously, we go out to Sundre area and Didsbury, Carstairs area for sure. But again, it's rare that we'd go unless it's a large-scale incident for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I would make the motion that we accept for information the second quarter quarterly report for the fire department, for the Olds Fire Department.
Thank you very much. Motion on the floor. Any comments or questions from that? Seeing none, all in favor? And the motion's carried. Thank you very much. And we will move on again to Justin Andrew for the Olds Municipal Enforcement Report.
Okay, thank you. Great to speak with you again. I'll put on my different hat. So our municipal enforcement statistics in this quarter, again, there's pieces that demographics speak to the time of year. Again, the one thing that has a huge impact on our municipal enforcement statistics, typically in the winter months, the snow-related service calls for sidewalks and traffic and things like that are substantially higher than they are in the kind of the spring period where everybody lets the snow melt away. But as far as the demographics that come from this for this quarter, again, in comparison to the previous trends, there's no alarming changes. The community standards demographic or bar graph here accounts for one of the largest number of reports or incidents that our officers are responding to. And again, that involves anything related to the bylaw pieces, unsightly premise, property type complaints and so on and so forth. So again, that is kind of the bread and butter of what municipal enforcement deals with. Animal control, again, there's been a few instances there. Again, there's been some situations in this quarter, and we've been struggling with it through the summer, that we have constantly run into some issues where engagement and education need to be ramped up, and so we've been working proactively to do so about educating owners of animals that dogs on the loose is not acceptable and must be contained. We certainly deal with a lot of situations with cats in town and have had lots of conversations there. And again, the big one for us is that people have been generating complaints or concerns through the program, whether they're calling our hotline or the Report a Problem network of we have citizens or passerbys that are collecting animals from the wild, if you will. They drive along and they see a cat and they think that it needs to be rescued, and then they call us and say, well, I've got this cat, now what do I do with it? And so those are the education pieces that we've been working on, is that, just because a cat is at large doesn't mean that you should collect it. And then we as the municipality do not want to be responsible for the housing and or care of such cat because it's been taken out of its own environment. So cats are somewhat nomadic in nature, but they do seem to find their way home. So we certainly don't advocate for people to be collecting animals, even though they may feel that that's the required thing to do. So that's the education piece that we're working on with people, is to try to minimize those needless activations of our enforcement officers for that kind of an activity, because it does place a huge strain on the local veterinarian centers, because they don't simply have the housing capacity for these cats that are domestic cats that are just on the lambs, if they will. So anyway, that kind of concludes our we do get the odd call for the random moose in the park, or skunks and fox and all of those wonderful things. And again, this is an education piece with our citizens, because most of the time the stance from Fish and Game is that the wild animals are just left to be wild unless they pose an undue risk on the community or for somebody, then they actually will not take action to remove them, or all they can do is just encourage them to move along and just leave them be. And then the other piece is where we actually do not engage in any kind of trapping activity. So like for skunks or fox in town, our officers do not engage in trapping. That's conducted by Medicine River Wildlife Center, that they have people that will come and try to trap and relocate those types of animals. But again, they're mostly just encouraged to move along, and they don't pose much of a problem. Anyway, moving along here, as far as our concluded files, so you can see the vast majority of our files are concluded fairly quickly. They usually only take a phone call or a brief follow-up to conclude. The others that remain open typically are ones that involve, I don't want to use the word prolific offenders, but I want to look at more complex files where, you know, it's not as simple as, you know, if you've got a weed concern, it may not be resolved that day, and it might take a few months' time to clear itself up completely. And same with other bylaw related things such as unsightly premise and so on and so forth. It can linger. So the one thing that you will see is that there has definitely been a decline in our traffic related statistics. And again, that was the transition of our officers and the vacancy that we had in the positions. So we hope that the next reporting cycle will come, that you'll start to see those numbers pop back up again. Again, it's always a difficult piece when you transition officers because of the process of gathering appointments with the Solicitor General. It's not as simple as hiring a peace officer that's fully functional. They have to go through their whole vetting process and administrative procedure to actually be appointed as a peace officer to go and enforce moving traffic violations. So anyway, this next slide is showing that the source of the complaints. So our dispatch service is Yellowhead Dispatch, who is the people that answer the phone when you phone the complaint line. So we're seeing a very large majority of them coming that way. The second highest is officer observed, which is a great indicator that our officers are actually out and about in the community looking for problems, trying to be as proactive as we can. I can certainly tell you that lately it's been very difficult to have any proactive activity going on because our resources have been taxed. We have had an exceptional busy summer with a lot of complex nature problems that are being dealt with, and it is very taxing on our people. But the one thing that has been very solid is keeping these numbers up is that our summer student, the bylaw officer that came in for the summer, had done a phenomenal job of being active and out every single day and picking up things that would normally get swept under the rug or being passed simply because the other officers have, you know, many other things on the go. So bang for the buck, you got top dollar value this year out of our bylaw summer student, and yeah, we hate to see him go. He's actually helping out. He's moving over to the RCMP to do some work with them for a few months to fill in their clerical part. So it's part of his profile or portfolio growth, which is fantastic for him. Helps the RCMP, and that was great. But we definitely did very well this year. So, other than that, I think this map just shows the different zones. And again, I'm sorry I can't speak to this with 100% accuracy. I don't know which the zones are according to the map, but yeah, I think that if I had to guess, the light blue zone is downtown. And the reason that the statistic is high is because most of the traffic and parking infractions would happen in that zone due to snow removal, would be my guess. So we'll have to look at how we can report this differently with a map or something as a legend. So, yeah. And again, day of the week piece, yeah, there's pretty standard pieces right across the board here. Obviously, Friday is a busy day because there's lots of people moving. And then on the weekends, that number is very low, again, simply because our officers typically are not working on the weekend simply because of the staffing issue. So, and again, hours of the day, all of these pieces, you know, come into that effect of the demographic. And we do see the bylaw and animal control as being the two busiest aspects of the job, so it takes a lot to run around and track down owners of animals and such, so. And that is the end of this report, I do believe. Oh, sorry. Incident types are all counted, so there's the tallies of each specific one, so again, in summary. These municipal enforcement guys got to pare down this information. There's way too much there. They've been generating these reports with the new records management program, the MRF, which is what they'd switched to for municipal enforcement nature last year. And it certainly is a more robust program that it breaks down a lot of this information. So in time, we'll have to take a look at this and with our senior officer, Wright, through council to see what you specifically would like, or if you don't see something that you would like to know, then we can definitely add it or subtract it from this report. So we're certainly open to feedback on that.
Yes, thank you, Director Andrew. I was going to make a comment about it because I did find that some of this information is just, it doesn't have any substance if it doesn't get explained, so, and especially when you have graph after graph, and one on 33 says found count of incidents. I don't know what found is supposed to mean. So, yeah, we need to have some kind of substance with regards to that. Perhaps something that can be followed up. Thank you.
We absolutely
Thank you
can. I'm sorry. All of the municipal enforcement team just conducted thorough training on this platform just this very last week. It was the first time that they had a chance. So, yeah, I would even put Officer Wright here, but he would be lost for words with what this is as well. So it's better for me to take the lumps on this one than him, but we'll get it sorted out for you for sure.
Problem. Thank you very much for your presentation, Director Andrew. Mayor Doll, questions?
One question. Thank you for sharing. Okay, what am I? That's me, right? Oh, that's odd. Anyways. It didn't do it before. Okay. My question is the bylaw summer student, that's great information sharing with the excellent work the student did. I assume they are a student. Are they going back to school or university? You did mention they're going over to the RCMP to help out there now. Is it an extended program, or please help me out there?
So in his case, he actually was a graduate this year, so he is not going to go back to school, but he actually does have a desire to go into policing as a career, but that may be a few years away, just as he's a very young individual. But like I say, the good thing for us with our bylaw program or having a summer student is, now this is the second one that we've had, because the first summer student was actually hired to be our second CPO and has worked out really well. And so the good news about having a program like this, it definitely allows us to bring in people on a short term. We get to give them some experience. They get to learn from seasoned officers and really give them that added experience so that they can, go on in a law enforcement or whatever kind of a career. The one thing that we did find was that having somebody dedicated specifically to bylaw gives us that extra time that they can focus. And so the example I'll give you specifically was this morning, is that it was identified that there had been some more graffiti done on the skateboard park. And unfortunately, it was of such that it was of explicit nature. And so as per our town policy is to have it removed. So that was identified by his witnessed account this morning. So it had happened sometime, well, it could have happened through the weekend, but it was identified first thing when we come back to work. And so the parks crew was able to be over there and already had it, underway to be removed before lunchtime. So that is one of those pieces where, like, say, to have that extra person that he can or she can focus specifically on that kind of stuff, it really helps us. And graffiti identification has been a big one. The other thing that they've been working on is the unsightly premises and getting a good account on that. And the other one that's been a huge scourge for us this fall has been the reports of green foxtail throughout the community with lots of concerns from the citizens about that, and so he's able to respond quickly and get over and identify these areas and then get remedy orders prepared for whoever the owners are. So it's been very good.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thank you, Director Andrew, for the report. I'm just interested in your thoughts or comments through your data analysis through the department and data capture around traffic. And you touched on traffic enforcement and hopefully what it'll look like going forward a little bit, but just around traffic enforcement and speeding. Is there a speeding concern issue in this town as you guys look at your data gather and as we seem to get a few letters every now and then?
So that's definitely the loaded question of the day. You know, I think anytime that you have situations where there's excessive speed being witnessed within a community, there is concern because there's always such a high risk for, you know, poor outcomes with pedestrians, kids, seniors, and all sorts of things. To say that it's a prolific problem, the data that we've collected so far would not be indicative to say that it's an excessive problem. Now, I refuse to say that it's not existent. So, and again, it's a matter of what your tolerance level is, because if one incident is, you know, too many, then it's a problem. It's the same with the impaired driving. So, again, any more than 0 is definitely a concern. And so the data that we've collected and the information that we are going to present to council for your consideration is what other municipalities have done with the speeding and reduction of general speed limits within their communities and the reasoning behind it. And so we are preparing the engagement to go out. We will start that engagement with the community showcase this week, where there's an online survey and some data and information for people to give us their feedback. We certainly have, I'm sure as you as councillors have received feedback from citizens, there's some for and definitely some against us to modify speed limits in town, and they have different accounts. But we also do have some work. The RCMP has allocated resource. There was it 2 weeks ago, I believe, that there was actually a dedicated traffic enforcement initiative in town where they brought in integrated traffic unit members, and they conducted speed traps in a couple of different locations in town, and those areas were identified by us as being Staff Sergeant Wright and Senior Officer Wright about locations where people have complained. And in the number of traffic or the vehicles that were stopped in those locations, it was a very, very small percentage of people that were actually traveling in exceedance of the speed limit. So it was, I believe, one of the demographics was there was just over 200 vehicles stopped on 57th Avenue in 2 different locations, and there was only 3 tickets that were issued in that time frame. So again, on that day, at that time, it was a low level. And that's the hard part, is that the data changes based on the hours of day and time, because Friday evening, that demographic may have changed. So we are going to work with the traffic unit to see, they will come back. They've already assured us of that, and we just need to look at what time of day and then what areas of focus that we want to give them. So I hope that answered your question.
Excellent detailed response. May I have a follow-up, please?
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm just curious, when we bring in the traffic unit, is there a cost with that? Because I would say let's bring them in every day for 31 days then.
You don't want to know the cost to that. So no, there is no cost when they come, and it is part of their provincial mandate that they rotate through. Now, I don't know specifically what the time frame on how soon you can have them, but I don't believe that you can have them back any time shorter than a month apart. I don't know, I'll speak with Staff Sergeant Wright to see, but again, it all depends on what the community need is and where they go. The big thing for us to consider, and we do need to be aware, is that even with what our recommendations are that are going to come forward to council and for information, is that the one thing that won't be suggested is that the speed limits on Highway 27 and/or 2A would not be on the table for discussion because those are set up by Alberta Transportation and take a whole different level. So, you know, anything that we do present will pertain specifically to municipal streets. And again, there are options that it's not a carte blanche, you know, flat speed limit change to everything. We could look at, you know, the collector routes of being a different speed limit versus residential side streets. We have seen that model in other communities with some moderate success, because if you make everything, you know, again, I don't want to give all the details, but if you slap a universal blanket of 30 kilometers an hour on all streets in the town of Olds, you know, when you're driving down 54th Street or 57th Avenue, that's very slow for a very, you know, substantial feeder route. So, and then you create more problems by doing that than if you have some stepped approaches. But with all of that comes a little bit more detail, because signage and traffic flow has to come into that. So those will be all pieces for us to consider.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Director Reiner. I was going to mention, just as a follow-up to that comment you made, that I was in a community just on the weekend, and they had a certain posting, and they said, this is the speed limit unless otherwise posted. So, yeah, you can vary the speed limits on different streets, which seemed fairly easy to follow. So thank you very much for the presentation with regards to your report, and can we get a motion on the floor? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I make the motion that we accept for information the Olds Municipal Enforcement second quarter report.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, can I get a vote to all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the item number 4D, which is Economic Development Quarterly Report, and CEO Williams.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. We have with us today our EDO, Sandra Blythe, and she will give us our quarterly update on economic development.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody had a good summer. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a report here that I can't figure out how to... Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, as always, it's the 3 critical areas that economic development focuses on, so that's where our presentation comes from. First and foremost, obviously, is the economic development strategy that Council decided to postpone till 2023, so nothing to report in this area right now. From a business retention and expansion perspective, unlike Director Andrew, I don't have a CRM system, so I don't have pretty charts, so I kind of pull up the email and the calendar and count manually. So I try and give you as clear of accurate a perspective of what I'm working on. But nonetheless, so business retention and expansion. So this one that you're looking at focuses specifically on businesses that contact me in relation to retention and expansion needs. So when you see number of calls and emails at 3, that does not mean I've only had 3 emails and calls over the course of this quarter. So those are specifically, I did not have to visit them. It was just basically an email or a call for assistance. On the left-hand side, we look at the particular areas that they might be calling about, so whether it was a visit or a call. And again, as mentioned last time, I think it's important to sort of outline what are their specific needs. Over time, we'll be able to start to see, you know, these are the types of calls that keep coming in. So this might be a priority area for us where we may want to lend service in some area or pump out more information on social media that would be relevant to these types of things. So garnering more of an understanding of local needs. So I also at the bottom provided the numbers from last time to give you an idea of how this quarter matches up. And right now we're looking at 7 active files that I'm working on in particular that things are happening in. All right, and then from the business attraction standpoint, it's always about investment readiness first and then attracting investment. So on the investment readiness side, this is our work that we're doing internally with the technical readiness team. 8 priority areas, those have not changed, but some of the things that have changed in this slide is, in particular, we have two new projects at the bottom that weren't there at the last update, which is one on an incentive program, so working on that, and then, of course, a comparative review of development fees. So those are two key projects that we feel are important for attracting investment. And then one of the projects moved over into the projects completed, which is the land and property database. So now if you go on our website and you look at the business development map, land and properties, you're going to start to see some different new properties that are up there. So, you know, Old Concrete has some listings, and there's more that are coming online. Some in particular include the county as well. So those are starting to come up. Essentially how that works is it is up to realtors or property owners to go in, fill in a very basic form, and then that form comes to me, I do a check of it, and we send it on to our GIS people who then put it on the website. It provides general content as far as who the realtor might be, point of contact, cost of the land potentially, the address and so forth. So nothing too detailed, very simple to add it in, and a lot of interest around that. In addition to that, this past week we went out and did a lot of drone footage on some of the properties that are available. So that footage is now in my inbox, and we're going to be loading that up, hopefully on GS, so people can also actually do a site visit and see the different elevations of land and whatnot that's in there. So that's about it that's new on that front. Business attraction. So here, a number of new developments. The biggest thing that's changed, of course, is the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. So I forget how many we had in there at the last, but there was now, over the last quarter, 45 reach outs from different immigrants looking for assistance in that program. We have put forward 2 for community letters. And those are, one is in the renewable energy space, and 2 of the other ones are in wholesale and retail businesses, for a total roughly around $840,000 if the investment happens. Jobs in that space, I can't remember how many jobs they would bring. I feel like it's around 70, but I could be wrong on that. And then as well, the number jumps up from last quarter to under the agriculture area, we have a new investment opportunity. So over the last couple of months, there has been a lot of traction. We've done 2 site visits with 2 very interested investors. One in particular just called and wants to do a second visit, and the other one is looking at us over 2 other jurisdictions. So we've really hit the mark on that one. So they are now putting dollars behind engineers and whatnot to scope out the concept for here. So lots of really exciting things happening there. Okay, and then on the business creation side, this is the entrepreneurship services. Again, this is all dependent on the business development coordinator position, which is currently on hold, pending the org review that's underway. And so now instead we're looking at more of an administrative support. So there's going to be some things happening around that in the coming weeks to get some admin support at least behind everything that's happening out of this office. RFP for digital marketing services. This RFP is going out this week. So hopefully we'll be able to get the website underway and get some digital marketing services happening. Those are the 3 areas that the RFP is going to be focusing on as far as goals. And then this last one is the various local, regional, provincial, national or international organizations that I've met with or events that I've attended over the last quarter. So a number of things happening there, as far as we also had the formation of the Development Investment Readiness Technical Team actually occurred now. So we had our first meeting around the larger scale investor. That meeting was very successful. So we are now, I think we had 23 in that meeting. So Fortis, ATCO, the Water Wastewater Commission, and all the various technical teams that need to be present. The province was also there with 2 different departments, as well as Invest Canada and others. So that meeting was quite successful. Feedback to me has been that, you know, they would like to see other communities doing this type of thing and coordinating this fashion around various investments that happen across the province. So things are advancing quickly there. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Blythe. Are there any questions? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Ms. Blythe. I want to go back to this drone footage that you're doing
Yeah.
locally in town with, on certain properties and probably through realtors or through the owners. We have their permission to do
Yes.
so? Okay, that is good. And just refresh my memory, what was the budget that we had set aside for that? Or is this a local company that's doing it, or are we doing it internally?
No, actually, it's part of our GIS contracts. So who knew, as we started investigating optimizing the GIS, we found out that we could have drone footage done. So he came out and actually spent the whole day and then some, covering as well our paths and different facilities in the community. So I have not seen the footage yet, but hopefully we can take that and then with the digital services person, add the digital graphic design around that and make it a real promotional piece.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Dahl?
Thank you very much. On your chart that you have here for investment attraction strategy execution, you've got the closed leads there. There's quite a large $500,000 for a religion organization I know of in the past that did strike up conversation in the community to build. So does this mean then this is off the table? And I did hear, but again, just a rumor that they were relocating to a different community, so thank you.
Yeah, so not sure if it's the same one you're talking about. But I should probably explain, when I say a closed lead, that means I have not heard from them in the last 4 to 5 months. They've gone black, essentially, is what we call it. Yeah, so, but what that also means is they are still in my system. So every 6 months to a year, I may do a reach out. If something comes up and I go, oh, that past investor, this may be of interest to them, I will do a follow-up. But ultimately, that means they've gone black.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thanks, Sandra, for the presentation. Just a couple questions, if I may. So just relative to the RFP that's just gone out, so we introduced InvestOlds back in early May. Is the site is it functional, usable? And I know we had a landing page, we had a business locator, business development page. Is that still all work in progress, or is it functional and usable?
Yeah, so the site that is, well, the page that's on our town site is temporary. It's leading towards the development of the actual website. So that's built into this RFP, that we will not only be looking for digital services, but also a website. And so ultimately, we'll be looking to see who out there can provide both those services.
Okay. And we do have a follow-up question, Deputy Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. And on Facebook, so we do have the social media.
Yes.
Are we tracking any metrics there? Do we know what the exposure is? Are we looking to avenues, methods to increase our exposure and our reach?
Yeah. So right now we have the various social media platforms. So we have been doing some posts, largely on government programs or government grants that are out there, or anything that comes up from a private sector standpoint. We've had some properties listed, but ultimately that's only the tip of the iceberg of where we need to be from a social media perspective. No, I have not looked at the analytics of that because I would have no clue until I actually see a report broken out. But part of the digital services is that they do have to provide monthly analytical reports to illustrate where we're seeing growth or not seeing growth and what the numbers are. So from my perspective, social media is fantastic for promoting, but I think engagement is going to happen more around email marketing campaigns, basically getting directly in the email boxes of actual businesses is going to have more bang for our buck. But nonetheless, we need social media to reach globally. So we will be tracking that, and that is part of the RFP, in that they have to illustrate in their proposal on how they would do that and illustrate their experience and ability to be able to do that as well.
Thank you. Did you have another question, Councillor Wilson?
If I may, yes.
Let's see if anybody else
Sure.
has first. Any out from this side of the table? Councillor Cummings, you have a question? Okay. All right, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just a question around the rural immigrant program. Like you indicate, there are 45 generated leads that have translated only into about 20 so far. Are all those related to the CAPE initiative and going overseas into India, or are there other leads that were coming forward?
Yeah, so the India trip by CAPE, I've only had one indicate to me that they were actually at that session, so all the others are coming through the online portal, as far as I know. I don't ask, did this come to you by CAPE? So I've had one that indicated to me that they were a part of that initial meeting. And I have a meeting set up with him, I think in October, where he wants to do an online meeting with him and his community. So he's a consultant here. With the community, where they've actually created a network around finding a specific community. So it's a good opportunity. We'll see what comes out of that. So basically it's a pitch, right? I'll go in, pitch the community, why we're a great place to invest, and field any questions that they might have.
Sounds good, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, I don't have any questions at this point. Sorry, Mayor Dahl. Thank you, you want to make a motion? Go ahead.
If it's okay through the chair. Thank you very much. I move that we accept for information the Economic Development Officer report dated September 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Any other questions, comments, or concerns with that? No? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Blythe, for your presentation. And we'll move on now to Operations and Capital Projects Update 4E. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have Director Grigo with us today to walk us through this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. To start off with respect to our capital projects, as you can see from around town, a number of these projects are already underway. 57th Ave and the lane development at Circle K, construction is going to be starting on that in early September, possibly even by the end of next week. Communication has gone out to residents, and our update has been made on the website. The 52nd Street road reconstruction and utility replacement is well underway. That project is also posted on our website. We have informed residents, so this project is well underway. The first block is estimated to be done early this week, and next week we'll be starting curb and gutter, and we'll be having paving done expected into mid-October, early to mid-October. The 50th Avenue Mill and Overlay, that project will also get started in mid-September, so we're well underway in our construction season with our MIP projects. Moving on to our Toboggan Hill, we don't want to talk about snow, but happily to say we have a Toboggan Hill that has been seeded. It has been completed, so it'll be a good location for local residents to do their tobogganing. So it has been seeded, and we'll have that underway shortly as well, because winter is soon upon us.
Hang on one second, Director Greco, did you have a question, or?
Directly to the Toboggan Hill, I've had about 3 residents ask me why we've got a fence on both sides at the top of the hill. I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I can answer that. So the reason for the fence on the 2 sides of the hill, we're trying to prevent users of the hill from going down that particular side of the hill. Olds Creek is on the one side, so we want to prevent riders from utilizing those 2 sides of the hill. So that would be the reason for the fence on the east and west side of the hill. Moving on to our other projects, our other winter project that will be well underway is our outdoor skating rink. We've received the finalized drawings, and construction on that is going to begin in mid-September as well. Moving over to our infiltration problems and our sanitary relining program. All the prep work is completed. We're going to be completing approximately 1,400 meters of sanitary relining. The majority of the work is going to be done on 52nd Street from 53rd Ave to 57th Ave, 52nd Street from 46th Ave to 49th Ave. And we're also doing the early section of 52nd where it transitions off of 57th Ave. And the reason for that is that will transition into our MIP project. So we're doing that section as well. Our catch basin repair and replacement, we're happy to say that this year we've completed 17 of these catch basins, and we're expecting to complete an additional 8 on 52nd. And so we're happy to report that. Other work that we're doing with infiltration was with respect to our manhole lining. This year we completed 11 manholes were relined, and that project is complete and wrapped up. A number of our large asphalt patching and paving jobs are ongoing throughout the community. One area that is a priority is in front of the Boys and Girls Club. That is an area that is a priority. It's a high maintenance area where we keep having to go back and work in that area. So that has a high priority. Contractors will continue to work for the entire fall season, right up until the snow falls. Sidewalk repairs and maintenance, you'll see a number of spots throughout the community that our annual sidewalk and replacement program is well underway. That's expected to be completed before the fall and the snowfall. Our 2023 MIP projects, so currently right now we're going through an assessment of where best to put our MIP dollars in 2023. Obviously, there's, with some of the events from this last spring, we have a renewed focus on infiltration and looking to resource those MIP dollars towards infiltration. In terms of our CET, we're continuing on with our water meter pilot project. The water meters are on back order, so but it is anticipated that they'll be here late fall for the launch of the actual pilot project. We're working on our library and civic identifier sign at the library, and we'll be having new Wayfair signage slated for Highway 27 and 65th Ave. Some time ago, I had brought forth the speed transition zone through Alberta Transportation. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on that. I did reach out to Alberta Transportation. This application has been formalized, but it is still, I'm waiting to hear back from them. So I have nothing back to report besides Alberta Transportation. Once I receive the results, I'll hear from them. I'll report back to council in due time. Our operations center, we're currently, we're putting in some added security, so we're having a security gate put in and power gate. That's anticipated to be completed within the next couple of weeks here. In the month of August, we did conduct our operational tours of the Ops Center. I just want to really commend the staff that got the equipment ready, the tours that took place. They were very well received. We anticipated about 30 people would show up at the event. We exceeded that. We had just under 50 people attend the event. I would like to thank the community for really being engaged into what operations does throughout the community. And again, just a kudos to the staff that put in extra effort with respect to that event. So it was a great success. Moving over to Parks and Recreation. So summer staff finished off last week. What a great year it was. We only had 3 returning summer students this year, so we did have to train an entirely new, basically new summer staff complement. We are seeing within the community, as Director Andrews said, we have seen some increased amounts of vandalism within and around Centennial Park, including graffiti. So that was just something that I wanted to note, and our parks crews do deal with that in a very expedient manner. Playground maintenance, tree trimming, and pruning are ongoing, as is weed control. With weed control this year, we are using a new system. It's called SatchuSteam. So we're giving this unit a call. It doesn't use chemical, and it basically utilizes steam. This unit, we're evaluating the results of it. It's still a little bit early. We rented this unit. We'll have it until the start of October. We're trying to get 3 applications in. A lot of these weeds are multi-generational, so we're thinking if we get 3 applications in and review the results of this, early on, it's really handy in the shrub beds, where it's very, very labor intensive to clean up the shrub beds. The attached pictures here show us doing some work at the fire hall in the shrub bed. It really does a good job at initial weeds. When they do come back before the second application, we do notice that they come back within the next week, and they come back even stronger. And that's the purpose for having to reapply the system over the course of 2 to 3 applications. So we'll hopefully be able to have some good results with this and report back next year on whether or not we procure a device that will help us deal with these weeds. So, and without any further ado, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much for your report, Director Grego. Sorry, I'm going to ask for Councillor Blatz. You have a question?
Actually, I have a comment, if I may. I actually had the opportunity this summer, one day out for a walk, to see the SatchuSteam machine in work. And I've noticed that the areas that I watched them do, they actually kind of gave me a little demonstration in the area they were working with, and it really is effective. It is working very, very well. I did notice some of them have come back, but as you said, a couple more applications of this, it should really work well, and we're not using any harsh chemicals or herbicides or anything out and about, so I thought that was really great.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Grego? Councillor Wilson.
Well, go ahead, Councillor Cummings. I just have a comment and a question. Thank you. One is, I'd be very interested to see the documentation and the report on the SatchuSteam machine, and interested to see if that translates into any reduction in summer student hiring as far as weeding and everything goes. And I'd be interested, what's the early returns on the IR paver and the efficiencies there and any dollar savings that we've realized compared to previous years?
Well, we're certainly still in the season of using the IR paver. So I think on next report, what I can do is give a better update with respect to the areas that we've done. Again, to clarify, not necessarily cost savings, to clarify what the IR paver will actually do for us is give us longevity with respect to the repairs. So typically we use a cold patch repair, which is a very, it gets you by. With the IR paver, what it's going to do is really give us longevity in those repairs and give us the ability to maintain our infrastructure for a longer period of time.
Thank you. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think I zoned out when you were explaining it on the very first slide, the reason we removed the 57th Avenue asphalt remediation north of the hospital. Could you remind me?
Just when we were reviewing our 2022 projects, because when the pricing came in, we decided to remove that project due to the cost structure within the MIP program.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. And with the outdoor arena, it will be operational by wintertime if we start late September, and everything will be ready to go in Centennial Park, correct?
Yeah, typically with ice and the making of ice, we're projected to probably have the rink open probably November, weather dependent.
Good, excellent.
The first thing that will be done with the project is getting the foundation.
Right.
The rest of the boards and structure, if you will, is going to be put up by the contractor. So that should go very, very quick. It's the getting in the concrete pad that will be the bulk of that project.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to ask two then, if that's okay, and that's directly related to the outdoor rink. So there was a concern with regards to the location of that rink because of utility right-of-ways and how that was going to be positioned on that land. Has that all been sorted out? Number one question.
Yeah, that has all been sorted out. The utility right-of-way is not necessarily the issue. There is a gas line close by, but we've moved the rink over a little bit. We can accommodate. There's no issues with respect to that, so it's full steam ahead.
Okay, that sounds good. And just earlier in your report, you had mentioned about the increase in the graffiti and vandalism in Centennial Park. Are we going to protect our brand-new outdoor arena from that kind of graffiti or vandalism that could occur?
Well, if Director Andrews was here, I would probably a better question for him. When it comes to dealing with the actual graffiti after the incident, our parks crews and whatnot deal with that in a timely basis. In terms of protecting it from graffiti, we do use a number of methods that remove the graffiti. It's a matter of how quick we can get there, so.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering about maybe the boards being easy to clean off any kind of graffiti that would be there, or being stable enough so that somebody trying to put their foot through it wouldn't be an easy kind of thing to do.
There's no real special product per se for that, but we will be responding to any and all graffiti issues. So,
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you for sharing that, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I can share that lighting is crucial for that area, especially if you're going to be building an arena outdoor. The reason it was built there was because there is lighting there 24 hours a day, and at night we have the lighting on the main street up there. I think it did help. I know it did help the skate park for quite a while. Most of the stuff that happens there is later in the early morning, so just add some more lighting if we could.
Director Greco?
There are provisions in, when the rink is built, that it's got provisions in there for lighting, so it will be very well lit.
Okay, thank you. And just further to my question with regards to the boards then, what kind of boards are we putting in there? Are they a durable material? Are they something you can just put your foot through it? Like, I'm just seeing, I want to make sure that if we're going to build this thing, and we do it right.
Yeah, they will be very durable materials. It's basically puck board. So if you see your standard puck board, it's not standard boards. So it will be more like an outdoor ice rink, but without the standard boards, it'll be puck board, which is a higher quality board.
Perfect, that's what I want to hear. Okay. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will ask for a motion. Councilor Daly.
Thank you. I move that we accept the update from operations and capital projects as information.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And thank you, Director Greco. We have, move on to business arising. Is there any, there hasn't been anything indicated earlier on, so I'll just pass along. No bylaws, and we'll move to 7, and 7A is CEO report. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. I had 3 items of emergent nature come up. Scott, you can probably sit just for this first one, just in case there's something. But Council in 2021 into 2022 budgeted for a trail extension from Duncan Place into the Highlands, if you know that area at all. We had slotted $70,000 for that project. As time and luck would have it, we will not get to that project this year. So the easy answer is to defer it into 2023 capital. The question I have for Council is on the priority of that project. Would you entertain another budget amendment brought forward to reallocate those dollars to operating for road maintenance, specifically speaking, north of the hospital? Or are you set on that project and let's just get it done?
Councilor Cummings first, and then Councilor Platts.
Thank you. Just some clarification. You're asking if we can reallocate the funds that were for the trail this year to the 57th Street repair that's been canceled because we don't have enough money for that one, and then revisit the trails in the next budget.
That's basically correct. It wouldn't take the full 70,000 to do the spot repair. It won't be the full 57th overlay that was proposed in the MIP project, which came in drastically over budget, 290,000, I believe. We'd be looking to basically dig out what's called blue clay, the soft material that's causing the issues that on that soft spot north of the hospital, refill it with clean clay and gravel it for now. And then there's always other projects with streets that we could do. The caveat is, of course, we may run out of time regardless to do Duncan, well, which we can't do Duncan at the moment, but any further road repair. But just more, if council wants to entertain it, we can get more information on the potential projects. And then with that caveat, we may run out of time to do those projects, depending on contractor availability is the big thing.
We'll go to Councilor Platts and then come back to you, Councilor Cummings.
Well, I just wanted to ensure that we would actually look at that trail replacement program for next year in 2023, because I know there's been several requests to have that trail extended. So I mean, I would be fine with you bringing information forward, perhaps even at the next meeting for a budget adjustment, providing we do the work in Duncan to the Highlands in 2023.
Go ahead, Councilor Cummings.
Thanks, and a comment as well. I would fully support removing funds from the pathway project immediately to road repairs. Sure, we have a few people who want more trails, but I know we have a whole lot more people that want less potholes.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl.
I'm not going to guess who wants what, but I will say that this has been carried over from previous years prior to 21, and I am tired of telling people that they're not getting done. So I would say, let's just move forward for our roads as long as this does come back for 2023. Because the people in the community that use those trails, ride on those trails, commute on those trails, deserve to have those trails.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, go ahead, CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just to reiterate, we will bring it back for consideration next year. But the risk is if it's not a carry forward amount, we may run out of dollars. That's with anything. But whereas right now we have 70,000 allocated, and we think we can get it done for that amount, it's just the timing of the work that just ran out. So this is just kind of planting that seed. If council wants to see an RFD for September 12th's meeting, it would be basically a budget amendment because we're putting capital dollars into operating. So,
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Question to CAO Williams. Is there a reasoning why we ran out of time for getting the trails done? Is it, are we doing the work ourselves, or is it a contractor that's coming in to do the work that couldn't get it done? Or I'm just wondering why we're in this predicament.
yeah, so it comes down to timing, but we certainly have a responsibility. We just didn't plan for it in time. There's probably a few excuses I can give you, but it's just we didn't manage our time properly. And with the wet season we had in June and July, as you can see from all of our capital projects starting in late August and early September, it's the nature of the beast. So the one contractor we have who's doing a lot of our spot repairs right now, who's also on 52nd Street. We're also pretty tight timeline for that Boys and Girls Club repair, for Ash Street, for a few other of those, I'll call them utility dig repairs. So it's, yeah, just we weren't properly organized. Testing. But yes, it's not that it's impossible to get it done, but with our timelines and fall coming, it's less than 50-50 for sure.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. My very brief comments are I don't have an issue. I support reallocating the funds from the pathway, and I appreciate the comments from Mayor Dahl and Councillor Blatz, but I think that discussion when it is on pathways and any other spend is going to be challenging, because we do have many priorities and challenges facing this council and this town going forward. So as important as pathways are, it'll be an interesting discussion in terms of the overall prioritization, but I do support reallocating funds.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Dahl.
I just want to finally say yes, and I'm just hearing my fellow councillor Wilson. We have to remember we need a walkable community too, and the trails provide that, and that is why they've been on the books. I bet you for the last 6 years, and left behind, because people also want a drivable community, but the walkable people get left out. So hopefully we can get this done next year.
Thank you. I have a question, if you don't mind. My concern would be, even allocating this 70,000 to the 57th Avenue repair. Would that even be getting done this year?
And that's the problem, or the risk. It may not get done. Strange. There's always a risk given our the queue of work we have. We will, pending council approval or how this discussion goes, we can start immediately trying to find available contractors who could do the work. I would say by end of September is really the last time you want to be mobbing someone in for that type of work. But given that there's no asphalt involved, particularly on 57th Street, it's better than 50-50, I'll call it that.
All right, well, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, to CAO. Again, I'm leery of saying, take the 70,000, put it into road repairs without having a guarantee next year of having money available to do the pass. You did mention defer the 70,000 until next year. I agree with Mayor Judy's comments that, this has been on the books for several years. And, I just feel that if we change halfway through from our budget plan, then again, how this looks to the general public as far as not carrying through with their expectations. And so I'm concerned about that if we just take the 70 and then we're uncertain of having the 70 for next year in our budget available for the pass, then we're negating on a promise that we made to our public. And so I'm just very concerned about that we get this done sooner rather than later. So I'm just throwing that out there. If we can find a contractor to fix the holes on 57th Avenue, why can't we find a contractor to do the trails? Just throwing it out there.
Go ahead, CAO Williams.
The main difference is just the asphalt component of the trails network. Asphalt has a shorter window, honestly, than dirt work does. And the contractor we had tentatively lined up, who is currently working for us right now, they have a lot of projects in that queue, as I mentioned. So the timing of it, it's that Duncan Trail would be the last project in the queue. It's less than likely they'll get there before it becomes just not feasible to lay asphalt. But you're also correct in your first comment. This is not something I really like bringing to council at the 11th hour now that we're in early September for another budget amendment. But also what I'm leaning on is the 57th in general, but also other parts are just in such poor shape and we have no money to fix them. So it wouldn't be an ask in trying to, cause this turmoil when we have a plan and people want us to execute that plan, if I didn't think it was necessary. Because it's not ideal to be asking council at this time, I agree, but there is the need there. But as Mayor Judy and yourself and Councillor Blatz have indicated, the trail system is important as well. And if again, this is just an ask to council, if council wishes to keep this on the books, we could try our hardest to get this done this season, but I'm not. I wouldn't guarantee it at all, so.
Thank you, CEO Williams. And I just want to point out that both of these projects were on our capital list. So this road repair that was way over budget, went way beyond our budget. And so there's also a concern about whether or not it would continue to be way above our budget for next year as well. So we might have to be saving more money than the 70,000 that we're saving on the trail, just to say. Okay, so what I would like to see would be maybe a motion from one of the members of council to say, asking our CEO to bring this back to our next council meeting for some type of a RFP or some kind of a business case for it. Sorry? Consideration. Yep, consideration.
This one should be the only one I would need direction on if there was you think there wasn't enough consensus amongst the discussion to give me proper direction.
So Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept the CEO's request for information and request that they bring it back to the September 12th council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments or concerns, questions? Seeing none, all in favor of that? And that's carried. And we'll go back to you again, CEO Williams, for the rest of your report.
Thank you. One item that came up recently, last week, which I sent a communication on, was the topic of ONET branding within the town's business. Let's call it that. So the need was identified to increase the community presence of ONET, specifically, let's call it signs or social media or website or just the general presence, I guess. And it's something I would agree with personally. It's also not the town's responsibility per se, or hasn't been historically, but now that we own the MCC that is ONET, I think it is in our best interest to promote that brand, to give it more visibility. And these can be relatively minor steps at first. Like I mentioned, we could, welcome signage was the first one in town on the highways. It can be social media posts, it could be updating our letterhead, big, relatively small things. And that effort could be then scaled up when future ideas and events arise. It wouldn't necessarily be a rebranding exercise because it's not our brand. We would just take what exists in ONET. We wouldn't want to create anything of our own, in my mind. We would just better integrate what exists with the MCC into the town's communications and public face. So what I'm asking council is a high level again. The first question, is this idea of increasing ONET branding acceptable in principle to council? And two, if so, if it is acceptable, what involvement does council want to have in that branding? So right now we're using ONET logos. We have ideas of where we want to put some ONET promotional slogans, logos, etc. So the question is, what would you like council's say to be in those matters?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl.
The first question that you posed to us with regards to branding, is it ideal for us to be bringing this to the table? I'm not talking for the past term, but I'm talking about the previous term. It's always been on the table to do marketing and branding. It was something that we were very weak at, and we need to improve that. That's my thought.
Any other comments or questions? You look like you're looking for one. Councillor Blatz.
Well, I know in the past term prior to COVID, we did have ONET come to what at that time was AUMA conference and set up a booth to try to promote it and do those types of things. So, I mean, I agree, we could be better at it. You know, I mean, just as long as it's not going to cost us a tremendous amount of budget dollars, I fully support promoting it as best we can.
So Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And yeah, my brief comment is to respond to the CEO's question. To me, yes, this is acceptable as far as the branding, call it whatever you want, branding, visibility, or promotion, awareness. I'm on board with it. I think it's a logical step as we move down the path with trying to expand ONET and grow it. Its profitable revenue base. As far as involvement, I have no real set criteria. I'm fine with leaving it to administration and your direction and bringing maybe a high-level thought plan strategy to council. I don't think this has to be a lot of work, a lot of effort. As I say, we can start off small, a termite approach with some simple signage, simple visibility, letterheads and so on, and evolve from there over time.
Councillor Cummings, you had your hand up, and then to Councillor Blatz.
Thanks, and I'll add my concurrence. I think we've got more than 4 of us saying, yeah, that we'll be happy to do the marketing program. And I agree with Councillor Wilson. I'm not a marketing specialist. We have communication specialists in town that can work with that, and as long as it's working within our current budget, I'm perfectly happy with that carry on.
Councillor Blatz.
And perhaps based on the presentation we just had from our economic development officer, it could be integrated in some of the promotions that she's doing in her platform, her website platform as well.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I think what's been said already I agree with, and I think that as Councillor Wilson has mentioned, that yeah, I'm in agreement with it. I'm not an advertising or marketing specialist, so I'll leave it to administration to handle that one. And that's a very good idea, Councillor Blatz, about the economic development, including that in the material going out to potential investors in the town of Olds. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll just have a comment, and that is, we should also do any kind of marketing in partnership with OFL, because, we don't want to be at cross purposes. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Chair Ryan. And yeah, regarding budget and then, I guess, coordination with OFL, everything will be done within the town's existing marketing budget, which isn't that much. I'd be surprised if this costs us more than a few $100s, honestly, for some chloroplast signs. Letterhead and whatnot is easily altered through in-house design. And coordination, correct. And with current OFL, both town located staff and our new business partners, it's something I do plan on making them aware and asking if they want input in this process. Initial conversations haven't been had, but obviously council direction was required first, so it won't be anything grand nor mysterious to start out, but I think it's any step is better than no step.
Okay, thank you very much, CEO Williams, for that. Question for the legislative clerk, do we need a motion for direction at all?
You're in a P&P meeting, you can mostly accept for information and direct to bring forward to the next council meeting, perhaps including what you want, but I wouldn't go too far.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate that. Mayor Dahl.
I can make that. I so move that council direct our CAO to move forward on ONET branding.
Branding or marketing?
Well, branding, marketing,
Marketing.
as long as it's visible.
You already have a brand.
Yes, thank you. Marketing, thank you.
Thank you, and any other comments, questions, concerns? None? All right, all in favor of that? And that motion is carried, thank you. And CEO Williams, you had one more point.
I did, yes, just an update on the organizational review and, again, a general question to council that require a bit more information, I'm sure, but just direction at this point. Overall, the review is going well and on track, time, budget, et cetera. Hope that everyone had the chance or will have the chance to schedule a meeting. This first part is what I would describe as kind of the structural review, reviewing our org chart, our positions, the comparatives to like municipalities, for instance. The next part is going to involve service levels, so trying to, at a high level, as the RFP proposed, comparing what we provide in terms of services to what our outcomes want to be, what we want our outcomes to be in those services. One issue that, I did warn the consultants up front, and they've identified, we don't have clear service levels and outcomes. It's just not clearly identified. I think, to use Councillor Wilson's favorite term, KPIs, so to speak. And it's not a bad thing. It's not needed to do the review, but to get a bit more, I'll call it organic or down to the roots, figuring out what those are would be helpful. So I did ask the consultant, what would it look like for them to tell us what our current service levels are, what that costs on an annual basis, and if we're delivering what the expected outcomes are, because obviously if you're only investing X, you can't expect Y. So for instance, and so they're going to do that. And my question to council: would you entertain considering, not today, obviously, a change in scope, expansion of scope, to include service level identification, costing, setting performance metrics, and then reviewing the organization on those? I don't think it'll be a significant amount of time over the current end of November timeframe. It would just require more investment from the consultants, and they'd have to bring in certain more people than they have right now. I do have I think I just got it on Friday. I haven't shared it with you yet, but I could share it for consideration at a council meeting, perhaps on the 12th, what that scope expansion would look like. But again, it's not necessary. You can still do it without the scope expansion, but thinking where council wants to go with this, it may be a valuable addition to this process.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Dahl.
I appreciate the forward thinking. I don't believe, speaking for myself, not for others around the table, that we would even be privy to this information if they weren't doing the work, that the consultants. And if it was a recommendation that they feel that needs a change of scope, I certainly would entertain it. We're not privy to what they're hearing. That's why we hired them. And if they need that tool to get them through to finish what we're asking for, I'm totally in favor of it.
So, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and my brief comment is I wholeheartedly endorse the scope expansion. It would be very interesting to see at what cost that comes, and I assume that would be part of the RFD at September 12th council or in that time frame. But on the surface, I endorse it, support it. It's a key part. To me, it's fundamental. It will help frame this town going forward as far as measured outcomes and deliverables. So I see it as being very essential.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion to, I guess, accept that as for information and to bring forward a request to council on the 12th? Yep. So, thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept CEO report for information on the org review and to bring forward to September 12th council meeting an RFD for org review scope expansion.
Thank you very much. Well said. Okay, any other questions or comments, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, CEO Williams, for bringing that forward. And that concludes our business for today. Can I get a motion for adjourn? Thank you, Councilor Daly. All in favor? Thank you.